feel like
The knuckle back.
I've got something wrong with me like But President Nagus, I'm glad that my presence today had such a wonderful outcome on the attendance. Anyway, so I'm going to show you some pictures. Just put up some pictures of my family, my life, and some things in South Africa, and the reason why I moved from South Africa, a little bit about South Africa, and then of course my life here in Canada, and a little bit more about what my family are up to and why I joined Rotary Club. So that's me, and you can see that I was obviously well looked after because I'm well nourished. I'm trying to figure out how to switch that photograph. I was born in Harrismith in South Africa in 1963. And,
Have to get right to
We like that picture.
It's a cute baby.
yeah.
Right down to 6. There we go.
So this is South Africa. South Africa is right on the tip of Africa, of course, so you know, of course. And Harrismith is somewhere here in the mountains. So very pretty little town, but I wasn't there very long. My parents moved from Harrismith, where my dad was working in the agricultural field, to the capital of Natal province, which is Natal province of this area here. And the capital is just over here, Pietermaritzburg. You can't really see it, but it's about 90 kilometers off the coast of the east coast of South Africa. Durban's a big city, and Pietermaritzburg was near Durban. Pietermaritzburg was the capital of that province. And then Cape Town is the famous, beautiful city on the south tip of Africa. And I'll show you some pictures about Cape Town because that's where my wife and I lived. So that's my parents, Alec and Ray Frayne. They were both born and bred in South Africa. Their parents were born and bred in South Africa as well. My dad's now deceased. He died a few years ago. We were chatting at the table. I was saying how my brother and I planned a trip back to South Africa to go and visit them. And before we got there, he died. So if you're putting off seeing family members, don't do it because I regret that you get back in time. So my mom still lives there. She lives in a mature living arrangement where they have little townhouses, and she lives there. My sister lives down the way from her. She's in her late 70s at the moment. That is Pietermaritzburg, so you can see a very lush part of the world. It's sort of semi-tropical there. Fairly big city, about 70,000 people living in that city.
Yeah.
Lots of trees and azaleas, and it's a pretty part of the world. It gets pretty cold though in the winter, and in South Africa they don't have insulation, and there's no heating pretty much. You just plug an electrical heater into the cold. So they do get frost. I'll show you some pictures of the mountain area where we lived at one point. This is the City Hall, which is the largest red brick building in the Southern Hemisphere. Pietermaritzburg was a Victorian, well, is a Victorian city, so set up by the British after the World War in the early 1900s, and that's the government building in Pietermaritzburg, Queen Victoria, the statue of Queen Victoria. So very colonial little town. That's my school, Maritzburg College. It's 150 years old last year, and it was used as barracks in the World War, which Canada, of course, fought on the side of the British in the World War. It's a very large school. That is just a boarding hospital actually now. So behind that is the actual school. Schools in South Africa are very different from schools in Alberta and what I've seen. This school was a high school running from grade 6 to grade 12, and there were 1,200 kids in the school. We had 9 full-size football fields at the school, 4 tennis courts, 2 squash courts, Olympic-sized swimming pool. So sport is played at the school, so there's no pressure on the parents to drop the kids off at school after them. Because sports starts immediately after school. And they play sport at school. This was a very sports-oriented school. And we play rugby and cricket were the main sports, but we play field hockey and squash and tennis and swimming. And you'll see there in the background is the uniform. So we used to wear a uniform with those hats, not the hats. And when the first team or the top team in the school plays against another school, it's normally on a Saturday in the afternoon, the entire school has to go. And you sign in, you've got to sign in. And there you can see them all sitting there watching the first team play. And when they score a point, then everyone throws their hat into the air. It's a mad scramble.
You're out before the next.
Very interesting, very different because all of the school life is different from Canadian school life. We used to go to school. And you go to school and then you do your sport afterwards, and then on the weekend you still got school sport. So, this is where my parents were living. So my dad was involved in the provincial park system. He was a ranger of the parks. And this is a provincial park called Giant's Castle. Giant's Castle because the mountain in this area was the shape of a giant's castle. And you'll see, I'll show you a picture of that. So they had a house in this area, and he was in charge of the entire park. And my mom was in charge of the camp, which would attract tourists and visitors. So it gets snow on the mountain. So that part of the world would get snow in the winter, and it would melt in the days, pretty much. But on the south slopes of the mountains, it would stay for most of the winter period. Beautiful. No, you can't ski. No. That snow is a few centimeters of snow. No skiing or anything like that. But, and then if you come down the slope, if you go into the little lower areas, it'll be warm. You walk around in a t-shirt. That's it in the summer, and you can see the Giant's Castle in the background. This is a beautiful area to be raised on in this area. And my brother and I became teenagers, we would be going on hikes like this and sometimes disappear for days camping. So we were very involved with nature, conservation, and those sort of things in South Africa. My dad was in the business, and they didn't have the Big Five in this particular park itself, but we would travel on our summer vacations and to some of the other parks. So my dad was very involved in the relocation of the black rhino to some other parks to try and save the black rhino, because the black rhino got down into endangered levels. And part of his job was relocating them to Canadian parks so that we could grow the population of black rhino. So black rhino is no longer endangered. These pictures were taken off the internet, but they're from Kruger National Park, which is one of the main parks in South Africa.
This elephant doesn't damage the top of the car?
Well, if it's aggressive, but you're pretty much dead. But so this one doesn't look like it's aggressive. Yeah, that would crash that elephant would crash that vehicle in pretty much no time.
Read insurance.
I personally, I would put my foot flat on the accelerator. There's the two rhino. I'm interested to know if anyone knows the difference between these two rhinos. You've got two types of rhino. One is white and one is black rhino. Anyone know the difference? So the black rhino is the one on the right. The black rhino is a forager, so it eats off bushes and trees and that. Whereas the white rhino you see with a flat jaw that grazes. So they're very different. The black rhino was the one that was endangered, and that's the one that was really involved in what we do at other parks. So this is wildlife. We used to travel to these parks. We took a great deal of interest in environmental side of things. And we loved hiking and visiting these places. So when we would go to a park, often the people in charge of that park would take us out on a private little tour because they wanted to show my dad the old rhino world. And when you go on a walk, they'd have someone with a rifle, coming along just in case something was wrong. Hyena, very interesting. You can see that sort of thing in these parks. That's a cheetah. Now my brother-in-law is still there, and he has part ownership in a private game park. And they've got, recently they've got a bunch of cheetah that they've put into their park. And, it's wonderful to see cheetah, actually. Very rare. So then after I finished school, I traveled down to Cape Town to go to university in Cape Town. This is Cape Town, taken from there. It's a beautiful city. If you ever get a chance to travel to Cape Town, probably one of the most magnificent places we've got this big mountain range in the center of the city, and the city goes around all around the side. You see to the north in the picture there. And I went to the University of Cape Town. I followed my brother there who was studying medicine at the University of Cape Town. So I went down there and lasted for 3 years. This is another view of Cape Town from Robben Island. Robben Island is an island off the coast. This picture was taken from Robben Island. That's where Nelson Mandela spent 20 years. But that's the view from Robben Island. Table Mountain. You can take a cable car from the city onto the top of the mountain. You can also walk, hike up the mountain. It's about a 5 or 6 hour walk. Those are the beaches that you experience in Cape Town. So my wife and I were both there. I met my wife in Cape Town, and we lived in Cape Town. It's a beautiful place to live when you're young people, anybody living there, but as young people we would spend our afternoons on the beach, swimming and hiking.
Is that sand?
That's sand, yeah. It's white, fine white sand. It's pretty much like you find in the Caribbean. This is one of the little towns around Cape Town called Camps Bay. It's just around the corner, so it's still on the coastline. So I spent a few years there. This is the harbour area of Cape Town, Victoria and Alfred harbour area. And a lot of tourists go to this place. Then I went back to Durban, which is near to where I grew up. Durban also on the coast. It's quite a big city, a couple of million people in Durban. And that's where I worked. So when I came out of university, first prosecuted as a Crown prosecutor. And it was a very interesting life prosecuting because of the amount of crime that we had in South Africa. So, and horrific crime that we can't even comprehend here in Canada. Random violence. So as a prosecutor, you'd see all of these horrific cases coming through, and particularly Israeli prosecuting. So I lasted doing that for a few years, and then I was quite happy to get out. But this is Durban, a pretty place to live in. So this is what most of the people in South Africa look like. Poverty is rough. 40% unemployment. 80% of the population living near the poverty line. 20% living near the middle class, and then probably like 2 or 3 class living in those houses that I showed you in Cape Town. So horrific conditions there, and they exist today, even though apartheid has been over now for 20 years. All that's happened, in my view, is they've just replaced the one upper class with a new upper class, but it's had little effect on the average person. So with poverty and crime, unemployment, as I say, 40%. So with poverty and unemployment comes crime. South Africa's got one of the highest crime rates in the world. And I'm sure that the statistics are suppressed by the government there as well. But the murder rate's very, very high. Rape, housebreaking, armed robberies, you sort of are acquainted to a place like Brazil, where beautiful place to go and visit. But if you get off the beaten track, then you could be in an area like this where you could get in trouble very quickly. So unlike Canada, Canada's probably got some places where you might not want to be, but there's recourse. You phone somebody, someone will help you. But there in South Africa, if you get into trouble there, you can get into trouble because police probably won't show up. You've got no real recourse.
The police won't show up because of the area?
They're too busy doing other things. Corruption is right. They could be raising care, less. What are you doing in the first place? Stuff like that. So, and they're probably way overworked as well. So, all sorts of problems. And South Africa's had a history of unrest for many years, and they've still got that. You still see these horror stories every now and then on TV here in Canada. They all use their South Africa. You know, if you compare a newspaper here in Canada to a newspaper in South Africa, you'd be totally shocked. First 10 pages would be mayhem and crime and violence. And then
They
after
still
that,
report it.
beg your pardon?
They still report it even though it's
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah, that makes its way to the newspapers. The newspapers there, you know, like, full of murder and murder. So the history of unrest, and understandably because of the poverty, and corruption is another big problem. So major corruption in South Africa, unlike here, it doesn't even make it into the newspapers. Yeah, someone doesn't declare their address correctly. It's big news for weeks on end. The politicians there are in a position of power, they can pretty much take what they want. And they do. The current president there was involved in an arms deal where he took a cut for kickbacks of millions of dollars. So he's the president.
Caroline Schreiber on the other end of that?
Sorry?
Caroline Schreiber on the other end of that deal too?
Probably, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. So that's why we moved, because we were living in Durban, I was working there, and we had our first child. My brother was living in Canada at that time. We'd come out to visit, and I said, I think that this place is not the place to raise our family. I think we've got to find a place where we're safe, where we can feel that we're going someplace, and where we feel that there's a future, because I think in the long run, South Africa it's going to get worse and worse gradually, because how can you sustain peace in a country where you've got 40% unemployment, 80% of your population living in the poverty line? It's got the highest rate of HIV in the world. So I think sub-Saharan Africa is the highest rates of HIV infection in the entire world. So that's a major problem. You've heard these stories about grandmothers helping grandmothers there. That's because grandmothers are raising kids because parents are affected by AIDS. And so they've got major economic problems there because their economically viable class is being decimated by AIDS. So we thought about Canada, and we decided we'd move to Canada because my brother was here. He came out to visit in 1998. Looked around in British Columbia. My brother said, "Don't go to Alberta. That's the real, that's some real sticks there. They have 4x4s and get around there." So we only looked at
But you
British
can get a
Columbia.
nice trailer and a nice car.
But British Columbia was enough. We'd seen enough that we thought this is the sort of place that we would go. So
Where does she rent it?
he lives in Fort Lane in London. So it's, I guess, British Columbia. And so we applied. It took us 2 years to get approved. And by the time we were approved, my eldest son was six months old. And we got a call. We used an immigration lawyer in British Columbia, in Vancouver, and he phoned us and said, "You've been approved, but the downside is you've got 6 months to move because your medical is coming up for renewal. If you let the medical expire, then you've got to reapply, and so you've got 6 months." So I madly started looking around for jobs in Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal. Of course, there was nothing in those places. job in Yellowknife. So I thought very seriously about that, and they offered me a job. And I spoke to some people there who had come from South Africa. They were working in the diamond mine there. And they said to me, yeah, we've just recently got a McDonald's. You know, that's, and also there's 6 months of darkness. And I said, well, would you stay there permanently? You think you'd stay there? No, first opportunity to get moved. And I applied for a job with Bernstein Grant over the internet. They were advertising for an associate lawyer. And they interviewed me over the internet with a video conference. And fortunately, they offered me a position, and I said to my wife, where we're going, we've no idea what it's going to be like, but we'll just take a chance, and if we don't like it, we can move. So here we are. We've come to this part of the world. We moved to Stony Plain originally because the Bernstein Grant is in Stony Plain. Bought a little place in town, and have settled in. I now live, as Brad said, on an acreage north of Barton County, north on 779, so just on the border. And so working in Bernstein Grant, done everything there, but at the moment I'm doing real estate, business law, and laws and estates. This is my wife Candice. We've been married 20 years this year, and fortunately I remembered the anniversary on the 20th of February. Otherwise I was in trouble. And that's my youngest guy, Luke. He's now 7 years old. So Candice works part-time. When we first moved, she was raising the kids. She's now working part-time as an office manager in Edmonton, with a firm in Edmonton, and she volunteers at school, so she spends a huge amount of time at the school. She's on the parent committee there. She runs the fundraising and the hot lunches, so she puts a huge amount of time. And recently, this year, through their fundraising, they actually bought 30 Apple laptop computers for the kids, so they're doing a lot of fundraising at the school. Those are my 3 boys. Michael on the left, he's 12 years old, and Josh on the right is 10, and Luke and Will. They're in lots of trouble. We spend a lot of time taking them to the sporting events. Michael plays water polo. He's very keen on water polo. There's a very good water polo club here in Moose Grove. So he likes water polo. Josh is very keen on hockey, so he plays hockey. And I'm a reluctant hockey guy because it takes up a huge amount of time. And Luke is into judo. He wants to be able to deal with his brothers. So he does judo. And they all do music, so they're all enrolled in the I think it's the Royal Academy of Music. And Michael's grade 6, I think it is, and Josh is grade 4. Luke's grade 1. So they like the music, they actually get it. But they have guitar as well that they try to learn. So they keep us busy, they're very active, and we have a lot of fun with the kids. That's their game. This is my brother, Alistair. He's a physician. He lives in Fort Langley, in BC with my folks. A picture with my folks. And he's got 4 kids, and they've been in Canada now close to 30 years. And my sister Sandra, she's still in South Africa. She lives down the road from my mom, and her youngest daughter is Tracy. She's in the picture next to me. And that's her current home. Her husband's a hunter, as you can see. And that's a zebra skin behind. So she's still living there, and she supports mom quite a lot. So, in Canada, I've been involved since we've got here with the Chamber of Commerce. I first started off at the Stony Chamber of Commerce, where I was there for about 6 or 7 years. Eventually was the president of the Chamber of Commerce for a couple of years. I've been involved on the Alberta Water Polo Association as well for a couple of years with the executive. And then the Winter Games, I helped organize the Winter Games together with Anissa, who were directors of the Winter Games. My role was fundraising side of it. So those are the volunteering activities that I've been doing here, and I'm very pleased now to be involved in Rotary Club So why did I become a Rotarian? Brad sent me this little questionnaire, and one of the questions is, why did you become a Rotarian? So I thought about that, and the thought that came to mind was what my eldest son says to his younger brothers. Duh. Why would you not become a Rotarian? Really, when you think about all of the good that Rotary does. When I first became exposed to Rotary Club, it was through Mike Birdsell, who in the very first month that we were here, he brought me to one of your lunches. And that was in July of 2001. And I knew nothing about Rotary Club at the time. My parents were not involved in Rotary Club or anything like that. So I had a vague idea of what Rotary did, but I had no real idea of what Rotary Clubs do and Rotary International does. So over the years, I've been invited to the Lobster Fest, and I've did about 3 or 4 of those auctions. Gone to the Stony Plain Rotary Club a few times. I was involved with Eddie invited me to try and start a club in Atchison, and I attended some of those meetings with that Atchison club. Never seemed to get with the runners, the terrorists. And so Lyndon Monroe's invited me to join the Bottom After Dark Club, and I joined that club in 2010. It was founded, so I was one of the charter members of that club, and very much enjoyed being part of Rotary Club. Except the nighttime meetings, just I was angry with except with young kids that were into sport. So I wanted to make a move, and I'm very pleased that Brad was happy to encourage me to join this club and support me and sponsor me. So why am I involved in Rotary Club? Well, there's so much good that has been done by Rotary Club in our community. I could see that when I was part of the Chamber of Commerce. I could see the Rotary parks that you support. I could see the various events that the Rotary Club was supporting in our community. And when I came to meetings and when I looked at the newspaper, I saw the international park events being supported by Rotary Club. And my kids were very excited to get involved in polio, plus as well, those 2 of my guys collected pennies at the school and raised $300 or something. So they are excited about it. They understand how important it is to support our communities and support our world, especially in thinking now that there may be a war in a crazy country out there. And Rotary Club is ideal for me. There's no nationalistic philosophy behind it. It doesn't have any denominational, religious side either. We're just out there for the good of mankind and being good, decent people, supporting one another and supporting peace and each other in this world. So that I totally endorse and am supportive of that. I'm very proud to say that I'm a Rotarian, and I try and tell as many people as I can that I'm a Rotarian. And I hope to become a valuable member of your club by supporting all of the events and being involved in raising money, supporting the community, supporting international events as well. Okay. Any questions?
Did you go back to South Africa often, or just your family out here?
We try and fly my mom out in a couple of years. We tried to get her out at Christmas this last year, and she said she didn't want to come, it was too cold. I think she's got to the stage now where she's too old to travel, so we have to start going back. We have been back twice, and I just found that traveling with the entire family was just too much. So probably won't go back until they can carry their own bags.
Or wear whatever they're going to use for the horse.
Ray, what do you think Rotary can do to help South Africa's situation?
Well, they have some strong Rotary clubs in South Africa, and there are some events there that Rotary is involved in. Definitely, one of the biggest problems in South Africa is the healthcare. Most of the population doesn't have any access to health. AIDS is a huge big problem, and malaria is another huge big problem in South Africa. And access to clean water, as you saw from that picture, that is a squatter camp. And squatter camps exist in all of the big cities. And there are 30 to 40 million people size of Alberta with the population of Canada, that size. There are so many things that Rotary Club can get involved with. I would say water, AIDS, malaria, poverty relief. I don't know how it can be some sort of poverty relief, but there are lots of kids there who don't have a stable life.
You're basically just making the 6 areas of focus of Rotary, so.
Yeah, kids, they are innumerable things. There are Rotary clubs in all the big cities there, at least one, probably numerous Rotary clubs. So there are lots of things that we can do for
Are all the squatter camps, are they all blacks? All
Yes.
the bodies?
Yeah.
So the whites are still.
So the white, no, I'd say the whites, middle to upper class, you hardly ever find any of them living in a squatter area, because there is very, very strong racial divide still. From apartheid, it's followed through from apartheid. East Asian population, also middle to upper class. We have the largest East Asian population outside of India and Pakistan. And South Africa. So when they had that turmoil between Pakistan and India, a lot of people immigrated to South Africa. I'm talking. Yeah. So, but certainly I was.
If there's no occupation for them, how do they immigrate then? If
I
there's
know
no jobs?
they're involved in industry. They're very industrious people, so they're very involved in the economy. So, but I would say 80% of, well, I'd say 99% of the employed people is not.
Are there any wealthy left?
Yes, the ruling class have made sure that they're and incredibly well, not just well. So yeah, corruption is well.
Ray, you mentioned 2 things that seem to maybe be a solution to each other. On the one hand, working age and the able-bodied individuals in South Africa, that population is being decimated by AIDS. On the other hand, you have 40% unemployment. The two not find some way of canceling each other out.
Well, that's one of the, I'm not sure, I'm not no economist on how that all works out, but they've got it's probably the biggest economy in Africa. So it's a large economy. But when I say unemployment, I think there's a large number of people who might be in the informal sector as well. So there's a large informal sector where people can't find jobs because they've got no education, they haven't found their way through school, they can't get a job, whatever it may be. And they're sitting on the side of the road selling goods that they can, whatever goods they can sell. There's no cancelling out. I don't know how that all works out. There are 40 million people, 35, 40 million people. Large. And one of the mistakes, I like to preach about this in Canada as well, is one of the mistakes that South Africa made was in the 60s and 70s they were extremely wealthy country. It makes the top 10 in the world because they had gold, diamonds, uranium, all of the things that were well sought after. But they never created an industry around those resources. They exploited them. And they created an industry in India and in Europe for those products. And now they're getting to the end of the life cycle of the gold and diamonds, and they don't have anything to show for it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.